Hey guys, what? Aww. Some of your other youth leaders. We are going to film the next few weeks for you guys at a time when we're all supposed to be practicing social distancing. We want you to know that we are still here for you and that we're going to continue our Storyteller lesson the next couple weeks. So what we have coming up this week is we're talking about how when Jesus throws a party, we are all invited. And so, especially nowadays when there is nothing going on and nothing to do and everything's closed and there's no pasta at the grocery store, we're gonna like to be invited to go do things with friends. Being invited makes us feel important, it makes us feel special, it makes us feel included. But today we're gonna talk about a parable that Jesus shared when he talks about who he wanted to invite to his party. So back in Jesus' time though, just for you guys to get the history of what was going on here, the religious leaders were in charge. And at that point, they were the ones who were important, and they were the ones that were usually invited. And so basically, they lived with the idea that you have to be impressive to be invited to something. People were convinced that the only people that behaved properly, the only people that had authority were the ones that would be invited. And this meant that a lot of people were left out. And so, like we said last week, we tend to believe that some groups of people belong in church and that some don't. And that is not the case. And that was what Jesus was trying to explain to people. That maybe you felt like you don't belong. Maybe you're sitting here thinking that this is a random video and you don't understand any of this stuff about Jesus and that everyone else is going to get it and you don't. And that's okay if that's where you're at. But if you've ever felt that way, if you are feeling that way, know that you're not alone. We've all been there, and there's plenty of other people that feel the same way too. When I was a teenager, and even now sometimes, I feel that way a lot. And I feel like I have to behave and act how everyone else is, or believe the same thing that everyone else does, or be good in order to belong. And here's what you need to know is that Jesus, that's not where that belief comes from. He doesn't believe that. In fact, Jesus made very clear how he felt about this idea. And he did that by telling a story. So for the last few weeks, we've been talking about how Jesus was a great storyteller, how he told stories and parables that give people insight to what God believed. And often the stories took what people already believed and made them think differently. So Jesus took everyday situations and allowed people to see how he sees it versus how society would see it.
The passage in Luke begins with Jesus hanging out with some people at dinner. People were talking, laughing, sharing maybe buffalo wings? Okay, maybe. And telling stories. Jesus told a story about inviting people to a dinner party. And a guy jumped up and basically said, "What a blessing it will be to attend a feast in the kingdom of God." We don't know this for sure, but chances are good that he said this because he assumed that he knew what type of party it would be. Best of the best would be there. People were a big deal. Based on the way religious leaders saw Jesus, or God, I should say, he would only invite the most impressive people. In other words, the guy probably assumed he was invited. He was really feeling for himself, but that's not what Jesus had in mind, which is why the great storyteller immediately began another parable. A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests, Jesus began. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servants to tell those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is now ready." And this is exactly how parables would typically begin, like a normal story. A party was planned, and now it's time for the guests. But this parable, like all parables, had a twist. But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, "I have just bought a field, and I must go and see it. Please excuse me." The story goes on to give excuses from two other people, as to why they wouldn't be at the party. If you're the host of the party and you hear that everyone you invited has more important things to do, you'd be mad. And that's how the host of this party felt, according to Jesus' story. He's angry and aggravated. So what does he do? Go out quickly into the streets, he then said, and the alleys of the town, and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame, the host said. To the other people listening to the story, this was a major twist. The host didn't reschedule, didn't send servants to the first round of invitees in hopes of changing their minds. The host basically said, if they're not interested in coming, I'm not interested in having them. Go out and find other people who want to be here. And that's what the servant did. In this culture, being poor or sick or disabled often meant being a social outsider. And that's exactly who got an invite. He invited all the people no one would expect to be there. And when he was done, the servant said there was still room for more. So the host sent him back out. And told the servant to bring in anyone who wanted to attend. Why? He wanted a full house. He wanted people to be there who wanted to be there. That's the only qualification. Can you imagine what the people at Jesus' table thought when he told this story? So it's not a best dressed party for the oppressive in the kingdom? It's not exclusive for the best of the best in the kingdom of God? Nope. Everybody was invited. The only requirement for getting in was simply showing up. And the people who did show up were blown away. Why? Because no one had ever considered them to be the kind of people to be invited to a party. But in God's kingdom, they were exactly the right kind of people. Not because they had a lot of money, not because they were well-behaved, not because of their popularity, connections, choices, religious beliefs, or right choices, but because they wanted to be there. Can you imagine if you were in their position? They finally felt grateful, honored, special, important, humble, worthy. These people were exactly the people who weren't used to feeling accepted with no conditions. But in this story, Jesus was saying, this is what the kingdom of God is like. This means that you are invited. And so is the person you never expected. You can say yes to the invitation. And you can invite literally anybody else to attend as well.
I hope this changes how you guys think about church, how you think about the kind of people you interact with, the people that you thought belonged in church, what they look like, what they act like, what they think about. Because the most surprising thing about this parable is that everyone is invited. If you're not in the party today, I'd like to give you your invitation. No matter who you are or what you've done, you're invited and you belong here. For those of you who are already in this party, I want to challenge you to extend the invitation to others as well. To people who you have written off, to people you maybe originally didn't think belong here. They are just as invited as you are, and you could be the ones to invite them. We know right now it's kind of a hard time to be in community with one another, but we'd like to encourage you to still text your small group leaders. If you don't have a phone, maybe get on your parents' email and talk to them on how you can stay connected to us. We are here for you guys. We care about you, and we miss you. We hope to see you soon.